በዘወይ እኮ ብር መስጠት ይችላል። ብር እኮ መስጠት ይችላል። አውቆ ነው። ብር አቶ አይደለም፣ አውቆ ነው።
ፕሮፌሰር ዲቴል ፕሮፌሰር
እኔ ነብይ ነኝ። ለእናንተ አሁን ጸልያለሁ። በጌታ በኢየሱስ ወደ እናንተ ቡክ 10 ሚሊዮን ገባ። አሜን።
Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father.
ወደ አንቺ ቡክም 10 ሚሊዮን ገባ። ኢዳ ነው የምትከፍለው። እኔ እሷ ላይ ኢዳ ነው። ጮክና 10 ሚሊዮን ብሎት በመንፈሴ ነው አየሁ። የ10 ሚሊዮን ኢዳ፣ የ1 ሚሊዮን ኢዳ፣ የ2 ሚሊዮን ኢዳ፣ የ3 ሚሊዮን ኢዳ ቤታችሁ ውስጥ ያለው በጌታ በኢየሱስ አውጣው። እርግጠኛ ነኝ እዚያ ደረጃ ገብታችሁ የፈለጋችሁ ኢዳ ቢኖር ተከፍለዋል። ተከፍለዋል። አይዞ ጂሰስ እግዚአብሔር እንደዚህ ይለኛል። የኢትዮጵያ ነቢያቶች ሰራዊት ጌታ እግዚአብሔር ያስተካክላል።
አሜን።
ከሱ ውጭ ማንም ማስተካከል ለሆድ ለዝና ምራመዱ በዚህ ቦድጋርድ በዚህ ቦድጋርድ በዚህ ቦድጋርድ እናንተ በሼፍት ይመገባላችሁ። ሌላ ደግሞ ጎሮሮ ደግሞ ደርቋል። ለሼፍ ለመመገብ ቆንጆ ነው፣ ግን ሌላ ሰው ጎሮሮ ባይርቃችሁ አሪፍ ነው። ሼፍ ማስመገበው በላችኋቸው ለጸጋ በቂ ነው።
As a psychologist, I was trained in hypnosis. I was also raised in a very fundamentalist religious environment when I was growing up. So as I was learning hypnotic techniques, I started realizing how much ministers use hypnotic methods in their delivery. For example, voice cadence and repetition. The Lord will provide for you. The Lord will provide for you. Brothers and sisters, if you just have faith, the Lord will provide for you. Now, why do ministers use rhythm and repetition? It's to put people into an altered state of consciousness, a hypnotic trance, if you will, so that they can then make hypnotic suggestions about things like giving money or giving time, getting more involved in the church, proselytizing for the church. You may have gone to sleep in church, or you may have seen people going to sleep in church. But if you look at the definition of sleep, it's a loss of muscle tension. The people who go to sleep in church aren't laying down flat with no muscle tension. They're setting up, and they mean nodding off here and there. That is nothing more than a hypnotic state. They're very relaxed. They're feeling very good in that state. And And as a result of that, they start feeling like somehow the church has created this for them. The ministers created this for them. And they attribute it to God or spiritual experience. And they leave the church feeling very good. If you think of it as that minister has put them into a hypnotic trance through his repetition, through his use of rhythm, it all makes sense. Being raised in a fundamentalist home, I saw this from very early in my early childhood training. From the music, to the minister's voice, to the repetition of rituals, all are designed to create an altered state of consciousness. So, post-hypnotic suggestions can be given to give money, to give time, to proselytize. I'm going to talk about music later, because it's a special case. But we'll leave that for another time. In my book, The God Virus, I discuss hypnosis at length because it's so important in understanding how a church service works, a mass, or any religious service. A recent study at the University of Missouri found that the brain areas involved in spiritual experience are the same regardless of religion, whether it's a Buddhist, an Islamic person, a Christian. The brains and the brain chemistry is the same. Religion simply, through its services, evokes certain brain sequences and brain chemistry. So the key to a good church service is to evoke the right biochemicals in the brains of the congregants. So let's talk about church services and hypnosis. Now, I discussed this in an earlier session, but I want to go to a little different angle and a little different detail here. As I've said earlier, in our earlier, repetition and ritual is very important. For example, Catholics have you stand up and kneel and do all these things at least 13 times in just a single Mass. And I'm just talking a normal Mass. Pentecostals have loud music and ritualistic singing and swaying. Oh, Lord, save us. Oh, Lord, have mercy on us. And they go back and forth. Get on YouTube and look at a video of Sarah Palin, the vice presidential candidate's church up there in Alaska. You will see an entire congregation in a trance. Watch the minister of that church as he preaches. Watch him pace back and forth. Back and forth. Watch him repeat phrases over and over again. Watch him use verbal cadence that accents the same place every time. Sooner or later, it starts getting the group into a trance state. A good church service is designed to get a result. Now, that result may mean more commitment to the church. It may mean more money to the church. It may mean proselytizing the church. But the entire service is designed for some kind of result. Ministers spend hours thinking about and designing a church service that will get the result they want. Music and the sequence of the service takes people through an entire emotional experience. Done right, it leaves people with a mild euphoric sense that they then attribute to the God, to some spiritual aspect. The key psychologically is to get the congregants to associate the feelings they experience through the trance and ritual with a God or a spiritual experience. This ties them closer to the church. They feel like, wow, church did this for me. I feel much better. I feel like my sins are gone, so I need to come back. They believe the only way they can get this feeling is through the church. Of course, that's what the church wants them to think, is the only way they can get the feeling is to come to church every Sunday. They might get the same feeling from another activity like yoga or a simple meditation exercise, but they wouldn't get that with the church. Many of the, especially more conservative churches, are suspicious or oppose hypnosis or psychology or secular meditation techniques. Probably because if someone discovered they don't need a church to feel good about themselves, it might make them less likely to come back to church. So I don't care if someone is religious, if they believe in a God or gods. What I'm concerned about is talking about the fact that all religion is in some measure manipulative. For example, crowd psychology. You go to a football game. If the stands are full, it's so exciting. If they're not as full, it's not quite as exciting. But a full with cheers and teams playing hard, and maybe your team's winning, it creates a euphoria, an altered state of consciousness. But you wouldn't experience that as spiritual necessarily. Looking inside your brain, you'd see chemicals changing, all sorts of biochemical changes that create this experience that creates an altered state. It's similar in a church. A full church enhances the natural crowd experience. It sets people up to feel euphoric, to go into an altered state. And if you could look inside their brains, you'd see the same chemicals going off in their brains, the same synapses firing in their brains that fire in the football game. The service creates a euphoria. It creates an altered state inside the church. But the difference is, they feel it as spiritual. They feel like it's God touching them or in some way communicating with them. In this particular altered state, people could be more easily manipulated into giving money or believing some fantastic things. It's a form of hypnosis, which I'll talk about in another discussion.